how can you improve your listening abilities before you take the IELTS exam? In this lesson, we'll look at some ways to focus your practice so that you can improve your listening skills as much as possible before exam day. So in general, I recommend when you find a listening passage you want to use for practice, plan on listening to it 3 times. The first time through, just listen. Don't read along if you have a transcript to the passage, because that's more of a reading exercise than it is a listening exercise. You need practice listening and training your ear to hear different sounds, different accents, and different speakers, and trying to understand what they're saying. The second time you listen, that's when you should read along if you have a transcript to go along with the passage. Read along and try to figure out new vocabulary and new phrases that you didn't understand. But this is also a really good listening activity because let's say you listen to a lecture and it was a very difficult one. Maybe you only understood 75, 80%. And you went back and read through the second time after you listened, and you discovered that maybe you didn't know some of the vocabulary, but maybe you did understand the vocabulary. You just didn't understand the way that the speaker said it. Going through and reading along as you listen is a wonderful way to figure out why you didn't understand something that you were listening to and to practice that more. The third time you listen, this is where you're going to do something that might be new for you. So the third time, you should play the recording and stop it every sentence or two and try to repeat exactly what you heard the speaker say. Not only do you want to repeat what they said, you want to try to repeat it how they said it. Try to get their intonation, the tone of their voice, the emotion. When you repeat things the way you hear them, it's really a good pronunciation and speaking exercise. But it's also a good listening exercise because when you do that, you're training yourself to listen very closely to what you hear. When you try to repeat it, you have to repeat it having listened very closely. So it's a good listening activity for you to practice as well. Alright, so when you practice your listening, what should you use for practice? Well, the IELTS exam uses different formats for the listening passages. You'll have a lecture. Sometimes you'll have a speaker like a guide who gives you details or explains it, gives you directions about how to get somewhere, or details about maybe a historical object or a location. You'll also hear conversations, so you need to practice listening to things that are similar to those kinds of scenarios. I really recommend for the lecture style passages, listening to documentary videos, or podcasts. Also, TED Talks are really great for IELTS practice. I like TED Talks because there are many speakers included from around the world, and you're going to hear different accents. And so that's a nice way to practice listening to different people giving lecture-style presentations. For conversations and between two people or among groups for everyday language, it's good to watch TV, watch videos, movies. That's good listening practice too, especially if there are things you can find that have subtitles or transcripts that you can read for our 3 times method that we discussed before. When you're on the road or commuting, you probably don't want to do the full 3 times method, right? You may not want to repeat what you hear in public. I understand that. But you should still listen to things, as you have time. Can you download podcasts or listen to talk radio or download lectures that you find online? material or practice questions. What should you do for that? Well, when you do that kind of practice, you should try to imitate the test as closely as you can. You want to answer questions as you're listening to them, so you want to do that the way you're going to do it on exam day. On the IELTS, you don't have time to listen and take notes and then take your time on the questions. You answer questions as you go on the IELTS exam, so that's what you need to do when you practice listening. You also need to practice looking ahead to upcoming questions. So on the IELTS exam, you have between each section about 30 seconds or so to look ahead and read the questions before you listen. It's really an important strategy for success on the IELTS listening passages. So do that when you practice. Look at your questions. Don't give yourself too long, a few seconds to look and then listen and try to find specific information as you listen. Similarly, you want to look for those key words in your questions. You want to find the words that are most important, that are going to signal to you that the speaker is giving you the answer that you're listening for as you practice your listening passages. Okay, so after you've done this practice, you've imitated the test as closely as you can, that's when you want to listen again. And you should use the 3 times method that we started off with in this lesson. So use your IELTS listening passages to listen a second time, and this time read along. Try to figure out what you didn't understand. The 3rd time through, practice repeating what you hear and listening closely so that you can repeat it as closely as you can. Listen, then read, and listen and repeat. The 3 times method is a great way to develop your general listening skills so that you can do as well as you can on the IELTS exam. Here are some general tips and strategies to help you on the listening section. Let's start with some very basic tips. So one of the most important things you can do to avoid losing easy points on the listening paper is to make sure you always read the directions. The directions provide important information such as word limits, right? On your short answer questions, you always have a limit to the number of words and numbers you should use. So, can you use 1 word or 2 or 3? Maybe on different questions, you're supposed to answer with letters or numbers or numerals. This information is always supplied in the directions. You need to make a habit of looking to the directions quickly before each listening passage and its questions. Also, reading the directions helps you to understand each question fully. So in our lessons on the listening section, we are going to look at each type of listening question. So even though you'll understand each question type, each time you face a new set of questions on the IELTS, the directions will be slightly different. They will ask you to do something new with the listening passage. So you have to look to the directions to know exactly what you're supposed to do for each set of questions. Also, in addition to reading the directions, it's very important that you go to the questions that you're about to answer and analyze them a little bit before you listen to a passage. So, one part of the IELTS listening exam is that there are pauses in between each section of the test. So there will be 4 listening passages for you to listen to, and you will have some time in between each one to read the directions for the next section and to look at the questions before you listen to the next section. We will have a whole lesson where we look at how to do this, how to analyze questions before you listen to a passage. For now, I just want to point out that this is a key strategy for the listening paper on the IELTS. Okay? The reason it's important is because it's the best way and really the only way that you can keep up with the speaker as he or she is speaking. and answer all the questions well on the listening paper. The reason for that is you're only going to hear each passage one time. The expectation is that you will answer questions as you're listening to the passage. So you need to be answering as you listen to this difficult material for the first time. It's not easy. So a key strategy that we will discuss in detail in a future lesson is to find landmarks within each question before you listen. A landmark is something that you find within a question to let you know what you should be listening for within the passage. This works because on IELTS passages, answers always come in order. That means that you will hear the answer to question 1 before you hear the answer to question 2, and you will hear the answer to question 2 before you will hear the answer to question 3. All of the answers come in order as you listen. So finding landmarks relates to this fact. As you look at the questions that relate to the passage you're about to listen to, you find landmarks to let you know when you should expect certain kinds of information. For example, let's imagine you have a listening passage where you can tell from the questions that you are going to have to find locations in a city. So let's just say that question 1 you notice is something about City Hall. And the next question, question 2, you notice is something about a statue. Okay, so you're looking and analyzing the questions before you listen to the passage. You know that you're going to hear something about City Hall first before you hear something about a statue. If you are hearing some things about City Hall as you listen to the passage, and suddenly the speaker has stopped talking about City Hall and is now discussing a statue, there's a good chance that you missed the answer to question 1. If you didn't hear the answer, but they're already talking about statues, you know that because you found a landmark within the question. The landmark lets you know what to look for and in what order the question should come. If you believe you missed a question, like we saw just now, if you believe that, like our previous example, some question about City Hall already happened and you missed it, then what you do on the IELTS listening section is you just guess and move on. You can guess by marking an answer in your question booklet and coming back to it later at the end of the exam. They give you 10 minutes to write in answers, and maybe you can make a good guess during that time period at the end of the test. The point is, though, you don't want to lose your place in a passage because you're worrying about missing something that you think you should have heard. If you missed it, you missed it. Move on and make sure you answer the next questions well. Just be ready, because answers on this test can come really quickly. You could get 3 answers in a short amount of time within the passage, or they can be more spread out. Just remember, they will come in order, and if you have a good sense of the landmarks, the things you're planning to listen for, you will then know what to expect from the questions that are coming next. Okay, so how to manage your answer sheet and question sheet for the listening paper. So you want to use your question paper for notes. So in this section, you will have a question paper, the paper that explains the question, and then you will have an answer sheet where you mark your answers. Don't put any notes or answer guesses on your answer sheet until the very end of the test. Use your question paper to take any kinds of notes that you might take. You should not try to memorize answers as you take the test. So you really do need to answer questions as you hear them. This takes a lot of practice, and in other lessons in this about the listening paper, we will discuss strategies about how to do this. But some students think they can listen to the whole passage all the way through and then answer the questions after the passage is done. This does not work well on the IELTS exam. You will lose points because it's too Remember that spelling counts, and this is tough for the listening paper because you are listening to things, not necessarily reading them on a page. Maybe some of the words you need to fill in for your short answers are not written somewhere within the questions. So, spelling is important. As you are studying vocabulary, preparing for the IELTS exam, make sure that you are studying spelling as well. If you're not sure about the spelling of a word, then practice it on your question sheet. Right? So you have the 10-minute period after all of the listening passages are done. You can write the word down a couple times, look at it, see if it looks right to you, and then put your final answer on the answer sheet. Hopefully you can figure it out by the time you need to write it on the page. Okay, a last tip for managing your answer sheet is to just spend some time looking at common English names. Names come up often on the IELTS exam. Names like Mary, John, Kate, etc. Learn how to spell basic names in English. Go to word name lists that you can find on the internet and just spend a little time getting familiar with English names. You're supposed to know how to spell them, and sometimes they do test you on that on the listening exam. Okay, keep in mind that this is a difficult section of the test. For many students, the listening exam is really the most difficult part of the whole IELTS exam. Speakers can change their minds. Okay, so as you're listening, you may think you heard an answer to a question, and then a few seconds later, the speaker changes his or her mind and says something completely new. That's something to keep in mind and to watch for as you're listening to each passage. Speakers also hedge statements often. Hedging is where you say things like most people or some people. Okay, so this is a hedge because you're not really giving a strong answer, as strong as it could be, right? When you don't hedge, you say all, okay, instead of most, right? All people believe this. So hedging is where people say something that qualifies, that takes an answer or makes a statement that sounds like a strong statement, but then they make it weaker by adding, well, most or some people believe this or some people believe that. This is important because some questions will test you on whether you heard that the speaker hedged a statement. So they will have an answer choice that says, all people in this country believe whatever. But the speaker didn't say all. The speaker said most or some people. And they're testing you to see if you caught that. That can be a difficult thing to listen for on the speaking exam. Also, as in every section of the IELTS exam, correct answers are almost always paraphrases, okay? You can expect that all answers to each question will be a little bit tempting. So they will include language that you heard in the passage. Even though the answer is wrong, it will include words and information that you did hear. It's just incorrect for the question that they're asking you. Doing well on the IELTS listening section takes a lot of practice, and you will really need to do many listening practice questions in order to really learn how the IELTS tests your listening for in these difficult ways. Okay, so to recap our lesson here, make sure you read the directions every time for every question carefully. You also need to analyze questions before you listen, okay? Next, it's important to answer questions as you listen to a passage. So you will analyze them before you listen in that pause before the passage starts. But then when you are listening to a speaker speaking, you are trying to answer your questions as you listen to that person. Answers come in order on the IELTS exam, so that helps you to find landmarks with your question. These landmarks are things that tell you what you should be listening for. And if you don't hear an answer, if you've passed one of your landmarks and you don't know an answer, you just move on and try to focus on the next question so you don't lose extra points. Remember that spelling counts on the IELTS listening section, and the last suggestion is to just be on your toes. That's an expression we use to mean just be ready. The IELTS listening section is tricky, and you will have to listen closely and get very good at answering the different types of questions on this exam in order to feel comfortable for the real test you take. The best approach to IELTS listening passages is to answer questions while you're listening to the speaker. If you waited to answer your questions until after you listened to the whole passage, you would really have a tough time remembering all the details you're supposed to find as you listen. So you need to have a strategy to answering questions as you listen to the speaker. That's what we're looking at in this lesson. The APT method is a strategy for answering listening questions as you listen to a passage. Let's take a look at how this works for the IELTS listening paper. Okay, so the first skill is analysis. You're going to analyze each question before you listen to it. The second skill is prediction. You're going to try to figure out what kind of answer you'll be expected to provide. These first two skills are really things that you do before you listen to the passage. These are pre-listening strategies. The last skill then, skill number 3, is tracking, and that's something that you do as you're listening to the speaker. Okay, so let's take a close look at each one of these skills and how you can use them on your IELTS exam. First, analyzing. So the first thing you need to analyze are the directions. Okay, your directions will tell you how many words and numbers are allowed for short answer questions. Other questions will give you other types of answers, letters, numbers, numerals. It's important to take a note of this and really focus on this, because later, after you've finished listening to all 4 listening passages for the listening paper, you will have 10 minutes to put your answer on the answer sheet, and it's very important that you answer each question with the right format. So, focus on it. Make sure you notice it when you get to a new set of questions. Okay, then look at the questions themselves. What kinds of questions are you going to face? Are they going to be short answer? Are they going to be matching questions? What kind of question? In our lessons for the listening section, we will cover each type of listening question you might face. So you should be able to quickly identify what type it is when you get to your IELTS exam. But you can tell more just from taking a quick look at the questions. You can often, for example, find information out about who you'll be speaking or what topic they will be discussing. You can also get information sometimes about how the passage will be organized in organization. For example, some listening passages present a map, and you need to label the map based on directions that somebody gives you in the passage. You can often tell just by looking at the map how the information will be organized, because different landmarks will be labeled in particular ways, right? Questions 1, 2, 3, and 4 will appear on the map, and you know that questions in the listening paper always come in order. So just very quickly, by looking at the map and looking how the questions are organized on the map, you can guess the structure of the passage you're about to hear. All of this that you're doing to analyze the questions should be really quick, a few seconds. Remember, you don't have minutes in between each passage, you just have a few seconds to quickly analyze the passages. The more you practice, the better you'll get at quickly identifying what you're going to need to listen for. So let's practice this a little bit, analyzing this sample question. For right now, what I would like you to do is pause your video and look at this question and analyze it. Can you figure out anything about what the passage will be about, or how it might be organized based on just looking quickly at the questions? you've taken a look at the question. What did you notice? Well, very quickly you'll notice some basic things. You're going to be answering 4 questions, okay? And each of those 4 questions are short answer. You have to give your answer in no more than 3 words and/or a number. Okay, so we know that this answer should be no more than 3 words and a number. Okay, now below we have the 2 basic questions we're supposed to listen for. All right, you probably noticed that we are at a conference. All right, and we're expecting to hear something from a speaker at the conference, and he's explaining in some way why he's going to be late. Okay, so we know at the beginning of this passage, a speaker is going to be expressing some reasons for why he's late. Later then, they're going to be discussing dining options to attendees. Well, attendees are people who might be at a conference, so we're still on the subject of conferences, and they're discussing where to eat. All right, now you might be able to predict just from what we see in this question that we are either going to listen to someone speaking to a crowd or somebody speaking to another person explaining why he or she was late and discussing where they can find a good meal somewhere around this conference. All right, we don't know exactly that this is true, but this information helps us a lot because as we listen to the passage, we know there may be 2 basic parts to it. 1 about this discussion about lateness and 2 about dining options. And we know that since answers come in order, we can expect to look for that information at the beginning and end of the passage. All right, just taking a quick look, we've already gathered quite a bit of information by analyzing these questions. Now we're ready to listen and see if we can fill in those gaps. All right, a second step though, something that will make you even sharper in your ability to get the correct answers is to make predictions. So this is closely related to your analysis. And again, this is something you do before you listen to a passage. You're going to try to predict what kind of information will they ask me to provide. Okay, so by looking at the questions, okay, looking at the answers in the questions, you're trying to figure out things like this. Is my answer going to be a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb? Many times the questions give you grammatical clues so you know what kind of word you're listening for. You may be asked very clearly to listen for numbers, for money, dates, time, etc. Okay, that's going to help you. It's going to make you listen in a much more focused way as you go through the passage if you know ahead of time that you will have to find numbers of some kind. Are they going to describe a location? Are they giving directions? Are these people's names or proper nouns you'll need to listen for? So many different categories, and you can often figure out what it is just by looking at the questions and the answers. You may need to categorize something. Can you figure out the categories? All of this kind of thing is so useful for you before you listen to a passage. Secondly then, if you have time, underline some of the key words in the questions to help you remember what you're supposed to listen for. The last thing then, the third thing, write a quick note on your question sheet so you remember what to listen for. If it's helpful to you, write a note, say, okay, I'm listening for a type of restaurant or a person's name. You can scribble a note to yourself on your answer sheet to remind yourself if you have time. Just like your analysis, all of this needs to be quick, and both your analysis and your predictions work together. It's not like you do analysis first and then make predictions. Both of these happen at the same time. You're analyzing and predicting what to expect when you listen to the passage. Okay, so back to our sample question. it here so we remember as we listen to listen for dining options in the second part of the passage. Finally then, as you're listening, so you've already made your predictions and done your analysis, as you're listening you want to track answers. So you've already done so much work looking at the questions. Now you put it to use as you listen to the speaker. Just remember, answers come in order in IELTS listening passages. So answer number 1 will be presented first in the listening passage, and then you'll get the answer to 2, 3, and 4 in order as the speaker is speaking. Okay, so this helps you to track answers as they come. As you listen, use your analysis and predictions to follow along in the passage. Answers can be spread out very far from one another or very close, right? And 3 answers could come in a very short amount of time, or they could be spread out very far from each other in the passage. You have to be ready for that kind of thing. But as you listen, you want to mark answers on your question sheet, so you're making guesses on your question sheet. Later, after all of the listening passages are complete, you will have that 10 minutes at the end to write your answers on the answer sheet. Don't do that now. Just mark answers on your question sheet as you think you've heard them. When you believe you've heard an answer in the passage, then your attention should move to the next question. This is the essence of tracking. You're trying to figure out, have I answered question number 2? And if so, should I move to question number 3? And when you decide that, your focus changes away from question 2. But you need to listen closely. And sometimes speakers will think you have the answer to question number 2, but then the speaker will change his or her mind about question number 2. So you may need to change something that you already thought was settled. Just make sure to keep your attention on the question you're answering and the next question, so that you know, okay, if you missed an answer, let's say to number 2, you know that because you know what to expect for the next question, question number 3. Okay, so that's the last tip. Keep an eye on your current question and the next question. If you missed one, if you didn't hear an answer, you don't want to lose more points because you're focusing on that question and worrying about that question you missed. You need to try to make certain that you are following along with the speaker as they are speaking. Okay, so to recap, our first 2 skills are to analyze and predict. These 2 skills happen before you listen to a passage. You're trying to just notice as much as you can about the organization, the directions, what information you'll need to provide for an answer in your question. And then prediction is taking a look really closely at the questions themselves, underlining words that will help you figure out what kind of answer you'll need to provide. Tracking happens as you listen, so you're just trying to follow each question as you go. Remember, IELTS listening passage questions come in order, so once you've answered number 2 successfully, kind. These are the very standard kinds of topics you can expect. Daily life kind of situations. Definitely not an academic focus at all for passage 1. And so the vocabulary will be relatively simple, at least compared to the other parts of the listening paper. It's very important if you want to score well on the listening paper to avoid losing very easy points. Okay, because passage 1 is definitely the place where you can score the easiest points on the listening paper. Okay, so some ways that people miss easy points. Well, some people get stuck with the problem of not following the word count directions, right? Or just simply not following the directions telling you what kind of answer choice you should put in an answer for a question, right? Should it be letters, or should it be short answers, should it be some other form? So anyway, don't lose easy points. Read the directions, pay attention to word counts if it's a short answer question, and you'll avoid losing those simple points. Okay, now let's take a listen just to give you a sense of the kind of passage you can expect for part 1, for passage 1. Let's listen to a sample audio just to get you familiar with what it sounds like.
Do you have any workshops taking place during the month of January that would be able to accommodate a party of 12? It's for my daughter's birthday party.
Give me a moment while I check our diary. Okay, it looks like we have room for 12 people on either Wednesday, January 15th or Friday, January 24th. Would either of these dates work for your schedule?
Friday the 24th would be perfect. And what is the cost of the workshop per person?
It's £89 each for adults and £59 each for children under the age of 17 and over 65.
Okay, so that was some sample audio taken from our practice questions here, and it replicates the first passage, passage 1, and that's what it sounds like. A caller calling in, asking for information from an employee there. Okay, very common question types for passage 1 are short answer questions. Okay, very, very common. You have to do a short answer question for passage 1. Another very common question type are form completion questions. So these are the questions where you have some basic form that needs to be filled out, okay? Maybe like an application of some kind or an informational form, okay? That will be in your question booklet, and you need to fill in missing information on the form, okay? Again, this tends to be very basic information, numbers, names, addresses, things like that. Okay, so passage 1, the easiest one of the 4, it is a place where you can expect a dialogue between two people, and the key to this is to just pay attention to details. Don't lose easy points by not reading the directions or not following word count types, things like that. Okay, so those are the first, that's an overview of passage 1. This lesson is just a very quick and short overview of passage 2. Some information to get you familiar with what to expect on the second part of the IELTS listening paper, the second of 4. Alright, so passage 2, some basic information here. First of all, this can be a little harder than passage 1. Remember, passage 1 is that basic information involving two people talking to one another, often over the phone, some type of employee or somebody calling into that employee, a very common situation there. Passage 2 is going to be different because passage 2 is a monologue. So you will hear one person speaking, providing all of the information you need to answer the questions for this particular section of the test. Now, this is going to be still an everyday kind of situation, okay? And by that we mean it's not going to be a highly academic situation or an extremely specialized situation, okay? So later in passages 3 and 4, you might get some things like that. But here, this is more something that you might encounter in a daily scenario. Okay, so before we get to some of those topics, just noting that very often the speaker, the person you're listening to, is going to be some kind of expert or leader or guide. Okay, so that's sort of the relationship or the scenario you'll be listening to for passage 2. Okay, so what are they talking about usually in these experts that you hear in passage 2? Well, describing a place. Okay, so you might have somebody who is a tour guide of some kind, and they are giving a description of a particular location. That's a very common thing that happens in passage 2. Could also be describing some kind of organization. Okay, so it might be a person giving a presentation to a group of new employees or a group of clients, giving an overview of some department at a university. Okay, it could be just any kind of situation like that where you've got somebody sort of giving people basic information or an orientation. A third thing there, a very common thing, is giving directions. Okay, so the scenario is somebody who's telling you where to go in a particular place. It could be a downtown area. It could be in an office building of some kind. It could be a number of different places. But giving directions is a common thing. And the last thing, just giving a presentation. Now again, this won't be an academic presentation. It'll be some other kind of presentation, a town hall scenario where somebody's giving information about the city, something more like that than like a lecture. Okay, lectures will happen later in part 4. Okay, so that's kind of what to expect for passage 2. Just to get an overview or a good sense of what these passages sound like, let's listen to one of our practice question audio recordings just to give a short sample of what to expect in this part.
If we continue walking north, about a block up on the east side of the street is a playground for children to enjoy, including a swing set, 2 slides and a climbing frame. Notice that the playground has benches around the perimeter for parents to sit on and chat while keeping an eye on their kids. At the centre of the playground is a small shop that sells snacks and beverages for children to enjoy. Across the street from the playground is the general store, which sells all kinds of products one might need for their home.
Okay, so you heard the expert there giving a tour of that town area. We just heard part of it, and that's the kind of thing that you hear for passage 2. Directions, presentations, things like that. Okay, now the questions you can expect for this particular section. Now, a lot of different question types are possible, but the most common ones are the ones where you have to label maps or diagrams, plans, things like that. Those question types are very, very common for part 2 of the listening test, passage 2. And so expect that you might have some of that visual information that you need to label. We have some lessons related to those types of questions, so make sure you study those for passage 2, part 2. But also possible there, number 2, flowchart questions. Those can occur where somebody's describing a process or steps in some type of process. So that is a common question type, and note completion as well. Those are the types of questions where somebody's giving you, where you have an incomplete set of notes and you use whatever the person's saying to complete the notes that you have in front of you. Okay, now this doesn't mean these are the only types you're going to get, but these are the common types, the types to expect for the monologue you'll get in passage 2. Okay, so that's a very quick overview of passage 2 and what to expect in the second part of the listening paper. This lesson is part of our series just giving an introduction to each of the 4 parts of the listening paper, and we're going to focus on passage 3 in this particular lesson. So let's take a look at what to expect on this part. Passage 3 is much more challenging now than passages 1 and 2 were. Couple reasons for that, but one of the main ones is that Passage 3 has an academic focus, and you can expect more advanced vocabulary related to different kinds of academic discussions. Okay, but Passage 3 will not be a lecture. It's almost always a few speakers. Okay, so it can be a classroom situation. It could be a student or a few students talking to a professor about something they covered in class. It could be a discussion about a paper and why a student got a particular grade on a paper. It could just be a study session that you overhear, all right? But mostly it's going to be these academic scenarios where you get people talking about subject matter that can be somewhat challenging sometimes. Okay, so that's what makes this passage harder than the others. It's simply the topics are tougher, using more advanced vocabulary, and the element of this discussion among several people can also make it difficult because they go back and forth between different things in their conversation with one another, and that can make it somewhat challenging to follow along sometimes. Now, since this passage can be quite challenging, okay, I think it's important to study for it in a particular way to prepare and listen to as many things as possible. So if you look down below in the notes below this video, I've pasted some links to resources that you can use in order to study for the kinds of conversations that you can expect in Passage 3. You want, again, academically focused sort of discussions, but also other kinds of interactions where several people are talking to one another can work as well. So I've got a few ideas for you down below about passages that are not really IELTS passages. They're not study materials that are directly related to IELTS, okay, but they are good practice. If you're struggling with listening and Passage 3 is tough for you, these could be good supplemental materials for you to study in order to prepare for this part of the test. Okay, so check out those links below to give you some additional resources to study for this part of the listening paper. Okay, let's listen to some sample audio from this section to give you a sense of the kinds of things that you can expect to hear for this part of the exam. Okay, so let's just listen to a few moments of a sample recording here.
So, how can passive sonar be used to locate things? Well, I mean, can it locate things?
Well, passive sonar can't really locate objects on its own, but multiple passive devices used collectively can determine triangulation of a sound source. But there are limits to the usefulness of passive sonar. Keep in mind that the ocean is full of thermal layers. An abrupt shift in water temperatures can hurt the performance of less sophisticated devices.
Okay, so that's a portion of a recording from, that's a good example of what you can expect from Passage 3, Part 3 of this test. Okay, common types of questions for this part of the test. Well, matching, sentence completion, and table and summary completion questions are definitely common, so do study those because they pertain to this part of the test. We've got lesson videos for you on all these question types. But really, any question type is possible. Multiple choice, short answer. They really do use a range very often, so it's difficult to predict. But these are common question types you might expect on this part of the test. Okay, so Passage 3, a difficult discussion related to some kind of academic topic, is what to listen for and what to prepare for if you think about Part 3 of the listening paper. Okay, this is our very quick introduction to Passage 4, just to get you familiar with what to expect on this last part of the IELTS listening paper. All right, so let's talk just very quickly about what you can expect to see on this part, and we'll listen to an example passage, or at least part of an example passage later on in this quick lesson. All right, so Passage 4, Part 4 of the listening paper is a very challenging passage, the most difficult part of the listening paper for most people. Why is that? Well, you usually, almost always, this is going to be a kind of lecture. Okay, so you're going to hear one person talking, usually a professor, and they're going to be giving a lecture on some topic. Now, they're going to be talking at length and in depth about this topic. So, for example, if it's a art history class or a social science class or a biology class, you can expect they're going to be talking about some particular topic, going in, having several main points about that topic, and going into depth with a lot of detail about that one topic. All right, so the challenge here is to follow along and to be able to keep all of the information straight in your mind as you're listening to this tough lecture. Okay, so part 4, a very difficult passage for most students as they're taking the listening paper. Now, topics do vary widely. Okay, so it's not like you can go in and just study a lot of science and expect to do well. Okay, you have to have a broad focus as you think about what's possible on the part 4 of the listening papers, because many different lecture topics are certainly possible. All right, but at the very least, you're not really required to have specialized knowledge. Okay, this is not supposed to be a biology test or a history test. It's supposed to test your language and vocabulary. So you can expect tough vocabulary, but all of the answer choices will come directly from what you hear the speaker saying about whatever topic it is that he or she is discussing. Okay, so on that note, let's take a quick listen to a sample of a kind of lecture that you might expect to encounter on passage 4. Okay, we're just going to listen to a small portion of a lecture here just to give you a sense of what it's like. All right, so let's listen to that now.
Some of you might already realize that I'm talking about Karen Blixen. Blixen, who wrote her most famous works in English, by the way, she took the pen name Isak Dinesen, under which she published several collections of short stories and 2 novels. Well, let's start with the 2 memoirs about her life in what is now the East African nation of Kenya. Blixen was born in Rungstedlund, Denmark in 1885. She moved to Africa in 1914 and lived there until 1931, farming coffee on her plantation, as she so memorably describes, at the foot of the Ngong Hills.
Okay, so that is what a part 4 lecture will sound like, and you can hear we just got into a little bit of depth there. As you can imagine, these lectures are usually about 5, 6, 7 minutes long, and so there's going to be quite a bit more depth as the lecture continues into that topic. All right. Now, what kind of questions can you expect? Well, for this one, it's tough to predict any particular question type because any one of the question types is certainly possible for part 4, passage 4. But it is predictable to know what kinds of concepts will be tested, right? Usually, you're going to have to do some identification of main ideas, okay? So they want to see that you're able to follow along and really understand some of the main points that the speaker is discussing, okay? So that's part of it. Secondly, then, being able to categorize or especially supporting details. Okay, so often there will be questions like, for example, note completion questions, where information will be categorized for you on the notes in your test booklet, and you have to be able to figure out how the different supporting details work, or at least are organized according to the main points on the notes you're looking at. Okay, we've got lessons related to those types of questions, so you can go to those lessons to learn how to answer note completion questions, for example. Anyway, that's the kind of activity, the kind of material you'll be tested on, and that's one of the reasons why passage 4 or part 4 questions are tough, because you have to follow main ideas for these difficult lectures. All right, now since it's the toughest part, and since this is a very specialized kind of listening you're doing and kind of material you're listening to, it's it's important to prepare and to listen to a lot of different kinds of related materials as you're preparing for the IELTS. Okay, so down below, if you look in the notes below this lesson, I've included some links to some materials I recommend listening to as preparation for part 4, this most difficult part of the listening paper, right? There's some examples of sort of presentations and lectures that will cover the similar kinds of vocabulary and have a similar style as what you can expect on part 4 of the test. Okay, so go to those links, do as much listening as you can to those kinds of materials. The vocabulary and the style of those things will help you prepare for this last section of the listening paper. Okay, so that's our overview of part 4, passage 4 of the listening test. Let's take a close look at short answer listening questions. So, this is what most short answer questions will look like on the IELTS. So, you've got your word count directions up above where it says write no more than 3 words and or a number. Okay, so always have to pay close attention to that because it gives you the maximum number of words you're allowed to write in the blank. Then, below that is your prompt. And this is the most important part of your of your short answer question, because this is where you figure out what you're supposed to look for or listen for as the speakers are speaking. All right, we're going to take a close look at these in just a moment, but this is just to get you familiar with the look of a short answer question. There's a second type of short answer question, and this one looks very similar to a different type you may have already seen the video for, the sentence completion questions. Now, these are different from sentence completion questions because if you notice in the answer choice or in the questions down below, these are not complete sentences. Okay, so you're not finishing a complete sentence with your short answer. These are phrases. They can be short phrases or longer ones like this that you see here in questions 1 and 2. But anyway, they are not complete sentences. So really, that's one of the only things that differentiates this type of question from a sentence completion question. Okay, but anyway, this is another type of short answer question you might see where they give you a phrase and you need to fill in a blank in that phrase. Okay, otherwise it's just the same. Notice the word count and all of that. Very similar to the first type of short answer question we just saw. All right, so that's just to get you familiar with the look of these questions. Now let's talk about how to approach these questions. So, as you might guess, what your job is on this question type is to fill in the blank, right? You need to write a short answer to a question based on what the speakers say in the passage. You will be provided a word limit. It's usually 1 to 3 words, okay? And you are sometimes instructed that you can include a number in that, but that's an important piece of these questions is knowing your word limit. You don't want to miss a question because you added too many words. Another important part of these questions is that they need to make sense grammatically if there is especially surrounding information around the blank that you're supposed to fill in. Okay, so some words surrounding the blank, like we saw in the second type of short answer question at the beginning. So your answers need to fit. They need to make sense with the surrounding information, and they need to fit grammatically with the surrounding language, if there is any in the prompt. So if we look back to the second question type here, where it says needs to be blank. Okay, our answer will need to make sense grammatically in that particular phrase. Okay, number 2, food and medicine can be found blank. Okay, same thing. What you select, the word or words you select need to make sense. They need to fit logically and grammatically in this surrounding information. Okay, then back to our approach. The last thing here, when you analyze and predict, okay, so in the time you have before the speakers begin speaking, the 30 seconds, what your job is to try to predict as much as possible about the short answer before you listen. So this is where your job is to listen for, or to look for, okay, what part of speech is it likely to be? Am I looking for a noun, verb, adjective, etc.? So often it's easy to know if you're expected to fill in a number or a date, especially on the first part of the listening test, right? Parts 1 and 2, you're often asked to fill in things like phone numbers and addresses and other types of numbers like that. Okay, so looking for that information is a key to answering these questions well, because the more you know about what to listen for, the more targeted you can be as you're listening for specific information when the speakers are talking. Okay, so that's a key part of the strategy for this question type. Okay, so let's practice this a little bit. So this is the first set of questions we saw at the beginning of the lesson, and I've highlighted in green and yellow some things that I think would be important to notice in the time before the passage begins as you're trying to make predictions about what to listen for. Okay, so in green there, what we know is we're supposed to listen for some kinds of snacks, all right? And we have one of the answer choices filled in down below, okay? So we know one of the things is vegetable platter, okay? We're supposed to listen for other types of snacks that will be offered. All right, so we know these are going to be foods. I would probably circle snacks there and maybe even write a note down below by questions 12 and 13. Maybe you write the word snacks down there to help you remember that that's what you're supposed to listen for. Okay, but then let's continue on in the sentence here. There's an interesting part. So, what kinds of snacks will be offered at the evening event? All right, now we're imagining that this is before we've listened and we don't know yet what the speakers are going to say. One question I would have is, is there an evening event, and are there different events that are going to be described, right? Maybe there's an afternoon event in this listening passage too, or a breakfast, or something that's happening in the morning, right? We don't know yet. So that would be an interesting thing to underline, to keep in the back of your mind. Maybe there are going to be different events described by the speakers that we have to keep track of. And so you're supposed to listen for what foods, what snacks are going to be offered only at the evening event, okay? Again, once we start listening, we will hopefully get this information and it will be clear. And maybe there is only one event that they're going to describe, one evening event. But this is the type of thinking that will help you to predict what information to listen for and to try to avoid getting in the trap of listening for the wrong information or getting tripped up by things that you weren't expecting to be discussed by the speakers. Okay, so I would underline evening event as well as a prediction strategy for this set of questions. Okay, now the second set of example questions we had. Okay, and the parts in green there are things that I would really try to notice as clues about what to listen for as the speakers are talking. Okay, so we know, looking at the title, okay, and again, if there's ever a title, make sure to read it because that's important. Instructions for Sparky while we're away. Okay, we don't know exactly what this is going to be, but my guess is that we're going to hear someone giving instructions about how to take care of a pet, probably. Sparky is a pet name, usually a dog, I think. So I would guess that that's what we're about to hear. And as you look through the information provided in questions 1 and 2, it does seem to be related to an animal in some way, probably a pet. So we know that. That's something that would be a very solid guess for this set of questions. The parts in green then are things we should listen for. What needs to occur 3 times a day. What action? We know this pet needs to be, something needs to happen to it 3 times a day. Maybe it needs to be fed. Maybe, hopefully it doesn't need to be washed. That would be a lot of washing for a pet 3 times a day, but maybe, we don't know. Maybe needs to be walked would be a good guess. Okay, these are all things that we might predict are coming, but we don't know, and so at least making a guess about what's there based on the context will give us some good insight about what to listen for as the speakers are talking. Okay, the second one, food and medicine can be found. I'm guessing that this is going to be a location. Where can we find the food and medicine? Okay, so that would make sense logically, and a location would make sense grammatically in this particular phrase that we have here for question 2. So those would be my predictions for this set of questions, and that's a good, giving you an example of a good way to approach making predictions and analyzing these questions before the speakers begin talking. Okay, let's practice this a little bit. So here we have a sample set of short answer questions. Notice in the directions we're only supposed to supply no more than one word and or a number for questions 25 and 26. In the question itself, we're told that we need to answer the question, what can influence whether a behavior is considered normal or abnormal? Okay, so we're supposed to look for, if you look at questions 25 and 26, some factors. What kinds of factors are we supposed to listen for? All right, now factors is a noun. Okay, so possibly we should be listening for some adjectives to go in front of these nouns that they've supplied for us in question 25 and 26. So that is very helpful information as you're trying to predict what to listen for as the speakers are talking. All right, now some keywords there. What can influence? All right, so we're supposed to look for some influencing factors. And of course, then the important information is whether a behavior is normal or not normal. Okay, abnormal means not normal. Okay, so what factors can go into that type of decision? We already know that context is one of the things that the speakers are going to mention, and we just have to listen for the 2 extra factors. Okay, so I'm going to play the recording here. Why don't you try to answer these questions and listen for the correct answer as the speaker's talking?
That's a great example, Tricia. It really is a tricky process. The first thing to understand is that certain behaviors can be interpreted as normal or abnormal depending on the context in which they're carried out. And cultural or historical factors can also play an important role in shaping our views of normal and abnormal behavior too. In some societies, for example, it was common for people to mutilate themselves in grief, but now that would be considered self-destructive behavior and grounds for a visit to the psychologist.
Okay, so we got the answers in what the professor said there towards the middle in the sentence that reads this. The first thing to understand is that certain behaviors can be interpreted as normal or abnormal depending on the context in which they're carried out. And then the professor adds this additional information. It came quickly, so hopefully you're able to catch both answers even though he said them very fast and close together. And cultural and historical factors can also play an important role. Okay, so that word factors that was in the question was supplied for you. Okay, so, and it was also not paraphrased. It was used here by the professor, and it came quickly though, so you had to hear both factors in order to write down your answers for questions 25 and 26. Some key information there that came after the professor mentions cultural and historical factors is paraphrased in the question itself. So it says, the professor said, and cultural and historical factors can also play an important role in shaping our views. Okay, this is a good paraphrase there in the question where the question asks you what can influence. Okay, shaping our views and what can influence our paraphrases there. And they're related to the correct answers we got down below: cultural and historical factors. As we predicted, cultural and historical are adjective forms, so these are adjectives that going in front of the word factors that give us the correct answer for 25 and 26. Okay, so that's how to approach short answer questions. Just to review a little bit, remember that you should always read the prompt carefully to determine the information you should listen for. Okay, so look for those key words. Ask yourself questions. What might be tricky about this question that I need to listen closely for? Okay, remember our example of an evening event. We didn't know whether there were possibly other events we should be listening for. That type of analysis can really help you to answer the questions because you're thinking about possibilities that may come as the speakers are talking. As always, pay close attention to the word limit in the directions. Okay, that's just a basic thing you need to do for any short answer question on the IELTS. And the last thing, listen for paraphrases of keywords as you answer the question. Just like we saw in our sample question there, we had a good paraphrase of the information from the question and what the speaker said about what can influence people's determination of whether a behavior is normal or abnormal. Okay, so as always, as you're listening, expect that the keywords from your questions are going to be paraphrased by the speaker. Okay, so those are short answer questions, giving you an idea about how to approach this type of very common question on the IELTS listening paper. This lesson focuses on the IELTS listening question type sentence completion questions. Let's take a close look at these. So, just to get you familiar with the question type a little bit, this is what they look like. Really, these are just short answer questions, except that each of the questions is a full sentence that you need to complete with your answer choice. Other types of short answer questions are just phrases or blanks that you need to fill in, but these are full sentences. Okay, so that's what makes these a separate question type from the others. Notice in the directions, we've got a word limit, just like all short answer questions on the IELTS. In this case, only 2 words, up to 2 words are allowed. So 1 or 2 words would be an acceptable answer length for these questions. Okay, we're going to look at these questions later and analyze them a little bit. Let's just first think about how to approach this question type. So, the goal of this question, what you're supposed to do is to fill in a gap to a set of sentences that summarize key information from the passage. Sentence completion questions are most of the time about main ideas, key information. Okay, so these will not be usually very small details that you have to listen for, but rather very important ideas from the passage that you're listening to. Okay, so that's something you can expect out of this question type, is that this will be key information from the speakers. Okay, now when in the time before you listen to the passage, when you're analyzing the question and trying to predict what types of information you'll need to fill in your answers. First of all, it's of course important to take a close look at the word limit, okay, and look at the directions. That's just a basic strategy for all short answer question types. But also very important for this question type is to use the sentence information that's provided to you in order to fill in the blank. Because they give you a full sentence for this question type, you have a lot of information to help you answer the questions. There's a lot of contextual clues in the sentences themselves that should give you information about what to listen for. Okay, so for example, in this sample quotation there, the professor said he would not allow what? Okay, well, we know that the professor is not going to allow something, okay? So we get some grammatical information there. We know that this is going to probably be a noun that we need to fill in that blank with, okay? And this is going to be something that is prohibited by the professor, okay? Something that's not allowed. All of the vocabulary words there give us information about keywords to listen for from the passage. So that is very useful stuff for you as you're trying to predict what information to listen for. We will get a chance to practice this in just a moment after we analyze the sample questions just a little bit. Okay, the last point here is that any information you fill in to complete these sentences for the sentence completion questions you have needs to be grammatically correct. Okay, so you need to make sure whatever your answer choice is, that it fits grammatically, that you use the proper verb tense, okay, that you have subject-verb agreement, right? If it's a third person's present tense noun, it needs to have that S on the end, for example, or perhaps an ing, or whatever form is going to work grammatically for that particular question. So pay attention to grammar and make sure that the answer choice you supply fits grammatically with the rest of the sentence you're putting it into. Okay, now let's take a close look at the sample question we saw at the beginning of this lesson to think about how to analyze it before the listening passage begins, before the speaker starts speaking, right? In your 30-second time that you have to sort of take a look and try to make some predictions about what to listen for. So first of all, keywords. So as we said at the beginning, there is a lot of information in these sentence completion questions that you can use to help you listen. So keywords to questions 1 through 3 here. Well, in the first one, James could not finish his paper on time due to what? All right, so we need to listen for question 1, basically the reason why James couldn't finish. Okay, so those words underlined are the keys to answering question 1. Why couldn't James finish? And that's what you should underline for that first question there. Number 2, the professor offered James more time to finish. And, okay, so what did the professor offer to James? That's what we need to know. We know the professor gave James more time, but what else did the professor offer to James? Okay, so we need to listen for those keywords in the passage as the speakers are speaking. What did the professor offer to James? Third one, James will ask for help from whom? Okay, we need to know who James will go to for help with whatever he's working on. Sounds like he's having trouble with a particular paper that he's working on, right? If we look at these questions, we get that information as well, and the professor's giving some advice. So James is going to go to someone else other than the professor to ask for help, and that's what we need to listen for to get the answer for question number 3. Okay, now we can also look for other kinds of clues other than keywords, looking to the questions, the blanks themselves to figure out what kind of information will fit there grammatically and logically, right? So here we have some clues that we can analyze. So number 1, James could not finish his paper on time due to what? Okay. What would make sense there? Well, probably a noun, okay, at least some type of reason why the paper could not be completed. Is it the weather, an emergency, okay, maybe a medical problem? We don't know, okay, but that kind of noun phrase is most likely going to fill in your answer for number 1. So that would be the type of thing to listen for and to supply in that blank to get a correct answer that grammatically fits with the rest of the sentence. Okay, number 2 then. The professor offered James more time to finish and, okay, I put parallel structure in the blank there. Parallel structure is a sort of grammatical rule related to conjunctions like and. Something you could look up if you want to get more information about parallel structure or you forgot what that's about, basically the idea with parallel structure is that you need the same grammatical component on one side of a conjunction and on the other side of the conjunction, right? So if you put a verb on one side, there should be a verb on the other side of the conjunction as well. In this case, we could probably guess that the answer is going to be something like what we see on the left side of the conjunction and. So if we say the professor offered James more time to finish and to do something else would be a logical conclusion to this sentence, and it would make the conjunction have parallel structure on both sides, right? So that is a really excellent grammatical clue for number 2. Okay, number 3. This one's pretty clear. James will ask for help from... Okay, from whom? Is it a person? Is it some office, like maybe the writing center at campus? We don't know. But we know that it's going to be some person or group of people like that that will fill in the answer logically and grammatically for this sentence. We're going to get a noun in that place. Okay, so those are some ideas about how to make your predictions before the speakers begin talking for this particular set of questions. Okay, let's do some practice now. So, in a moment, I'm going to play a recording, and you can have a chance to answer these sample questions that you see below. But first, let's walk through them together, thinking about how to do our analysis and prediction. So, we know from the directions there, we've got a word limit of 2 words, so no more than 2 words to answer, to fill in these blanks. Look at question number 1. After the author's death. Okay, interesting information. We don't know yet. Are we going to hear information about this author from before his death? Okay, so is the death going to be a clue for you that the information is going to come? We don't know, but I would certainly underline this as a key word or phrase to give you a clue about what to listen for in the passage. It continues, reprinted versions of the short story text were blank by his family. Ooh, a really nice grammatical clue there. The verb were, then a blank, and then by his family. It would be very logical to assume that we are going to get a verb to fill in this blank, and it's going to be a passive voice construction, okay? What we need to probably listen for is what did the family do to the text after the author died for these reprinted versions. They did something to these versions after the death of the author, but we don't know what, and we need to listen for that verb or that action. Okay, so passive voice is most likely what to expect, so you're going to need to put a verb in past form, past participle form here, which is going to conform to a passive voice construction. Okay, so that's a great grammar clue for number 1. How about number 2? Reprinted versions had the same storyline, but a different what? Okay, a different something. We've got an article, a, an adjective, different, and then we can guess that a noun is going to complete this phrase here at the end. So there's a grammatical clue. We just need to know what these different versions had. Okay, so they were basically the same story, right? They had the same basic events of the story, but something changed. And what is that something that we need to put as to complete this sentence? That's what we should listen for. All right, so with that, I'm going to let you try to fill in these blanks. So here is the passage where you can get the answers to questions 1 and 2.
Okay, I see. So you're looking for a specific version of this story then?
Yeah. You see, the original version was published in a magazine called Weird Tales in 1927. But not long after it was published, the author died. When it was reprinted 10 years later, the author's family revised the story with a few changes to the original text.
I see. Out of curiosity, did the changes affect the meaning of the story, or were they just simple corrections?
I'm not exactly sure. That's one of the reasons why I'm trying to track down the original text. I've read interviews with editors and publishers who have said that the editorial changes made by the family didn't actually affect the plot of the story, but they did change the writing style. See, I'm studying this particular author's writing style very closely, and because this is one of his early stories, I really need to know how major the changes were. So that's why I'm trying to find the unedited text from 1927.
Okay, so let's look at the answers here. Hopefully you got these. Number 1, after the author's death, reprinted versions of the short story text were blank. All right, the correct verbs would be revised or possibly changed would be correct answers for this question. That's what we get when the male student, asking for help with this, says, when it was reprinted 10 years later, the author's family revised the story with a few changes. So we would need to, if you want to put changed as your answer, it would need to be changed. That answer would need to be changed from what the male student says, right? He said changes, but to make that word fit grammatically in the sentence, you'd have to change it to the form changed. Okay, so lots of changes discussed here. Anyway, those are your two answers. Now, you may have been tempted to put in the word reprinted. The family reprinted the story, but that doesn't make sense, of course, because the word reprinted is in the question itself. Reprinted versions of the story. We can't say that the family reprinted versions, right? That wouldn't make sense as an answer to this question. The only two that really work are revised or changed from this one. All right, now, as we guessed before we listened, the author's death was a good clue. It says, the student said, not long after it was published, the author died. Okay, so there's a paraphrase of the phrase we get at the beginning of our question, after the author's death. All right, so that was a good clue for you to answer this question. All right, number 1 is changed or revised. Number 2, reprinted versions had the same storyline, but a different what? Okay, and the answer is style or writing style would be a good answer for this question. That's what we get when the male student said, I've read interviews with editors and publishers who said that the editorial changes made by the family didn't actually affect the plot of the story. Okay, the plot is a paraphrase, synonym for the word storyline that we see in the question. Okay, so there's a clue for you, a key word, but they did change the writing style. Okay, so basically you can just transfer that information, writing style or style, to the blank to complete this sentence where it's paraphrasing what the student said in green down below. All right, so those are sentence completion questions. Just to review a little bit, your goal for sentence completion questions is to fill in the gap to a set of sentences summarizing key information from the passage. You need to keep track of your word number, okay? So watch those restrictions, as always, with any short answer question. Then the key to this question type is to look for grammar clues, logical clues as well, to help you fill in those blanks logically with what is provided to you in the sentence that you need to complete, okay? And if you just remember that each of the sentences you complete needs to be grammatically correct. That's something they're testing you on, and you will get the question wrong if you supply an answer. Even if you got maybe the right word, you just put it in the wrong form. If it doesn't work grammatically in the sentence, you will get the question marked incorrect. Okay, so those are sentence completion questions for the listening paper. This lesson focuses on the IELTS listening question types called plan, map, and diagram completion questions. So this is an example of what you might see. We'll just take a look here to get familiar with it, and then later in the lesson we'll analyze it a little bit. But this would be an example of a plan. So a plan is basically the floor plan of a building, usually, and it shows the layout of the rooms and different things you would find inside a building. And as you see there, some information is labeled for you, and some information is missing. And the questions are the things you need to fill, the missing information that you need to fill in. Okay, now a map question will look very similar to this, except it will simply be a map of usually a city or a town's, like a downtown area of a city. Maps look like this also. They're not very detailed. You're not going to have an extremely detailed map on the IELTS listening paper. They look very simple, just like the one you see. A diagram will be also similar, but it will not be a map of any kind or a plan. It will be a diagram usually of some kind of object or some type of process or phenomenon. So we'll look at an example of a diagram later in this lesson as we do an example question. The other thing to note here just quickly, usually this type of question, plan, map, and diagram completions, will have the answer choices in a box for you. Okay, not always. These can be short answer questions sometimes, but most frequently you'll have a list of options to choose from to fill in the blanks on the plan, map, or diagram you're looking at. Okay, so that's just to become familiar. Let's take a look at how to approach these questions and some basic information about them. All right, so the thing you're going to be listening for in this type of question is often directional vocabulary. So things like north, south, east, west, to go through the door, right? There's going to be someone often giving a tour of some place, or for some reason describing the layout of a building. Okay, so you might be listening to a tour guide of some kind, or you may be lost, and this person is helping you to find various destinations. They're going to give you directional vocabulary, and that's what you use to sort of locate and identify the different parts of the map or the plan that you're looking at. If it's a diagram question, you might be hearing descriptions of an object or some type of phenomenon, and you need to label the various elements that you see on the diagram itself. Okay, so you use the directional vocabulary, descriptions of the places or the things you're looking at from the speakers, and descriptions of whatever object or phenomenon is taking place, and you try to use those to fill in the gaps that you see, the questions. Okay, now in the time you have before listening to the speakers for these types of questions, so your time to analyze and make predictions about the questions, here's some advice on how to handle this particular type of IELTS listening question. Okay, so first of all, make sure you take a close look at the given information on the visual that you're looking at. Okay, so they're going to give you some names of places. They're going to give you some clues about where things are that are going to relate directly to what the speakers talk about. And so it's important to have a good sense of where things are located on the particular visual that you're looking at for this type of question. So definitely step number one should be to take a scan over the visual to sort of get your sense of where things are located. Okay, so the specific things you should look at: the title, directional information, any labels that are already there for you on the visual, and also, of course, look at the answer choices that you have, because these things will all relate in some way to what the speakers say in the passage. Okay, so take a close look at all of that information. The next thing you want to do then, after you sort of scan the entire thing, trying to gather as much information as you can about where things are and what's going to be described by the speakers, the next thing you want to do is locate the first question. Okay, that is where you're going to hear the information to help you answer that first question first from the speakers. So that's the place to begin. Take a close look in the surrounding area surrounding that first question to give you clues about where, what you need to be listening for to get that first answer, because most of the time, almost always, the speakers are going to describe something surrounding that first question to get you started. Okay? Then the next thing you want to do is notice the sort of sequence of questions on the visual. Okay? So from moving from numbers 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, how do the questions progress? And you need to make guesses about what are going to be the signals that let me know to move on from one question and to listen for the answer to the next question. Okay, so let's think about that just a little bit on what I'm talking about here. Back to our example question, the plan completion question we saw at the beginning of this lesson. Okay, so as we're scanning this particular plan, notice a few things. So if we're just trying to scan it to get the basic information, well, we look at the title. The title up at the top is Office Floor Plan. Okay, so we are looking at an office space of some kind, all right? And that's what we're going to hear described by the speaker. All right, then, very important information, some directional information is provided to you. We have the north end all the way to the left and the south end all the way to the right. Okay, that is probably very important information. It is almost guaranteed that the speaker at some point is going to use north and south as descriptions of what he or she is talking about. Okay, so very important to circle that. Just make a note of it, which direction is which on this particular map. Okay, so north and south, very key information there. Then as we're looking around, okay, we've got some provided labels. We've got some numbers, numbered rooms at the top, 101, 102, 103, 104, and we're supposed to label the room next to room 101. We could maybe guess that it's going to be room 100, but IELTS would not give you such an easy question. It's going to be something other than room 100 there. But that answer choice 3 is in between, sort of wedged in between room 101 there and the restrooms that are all the way to the left. So we have to listen for that. But more importantly, as you're analyzing and predicting for this question, as we noted earlier, just a moment ago, it's important to begin with question number 1. Where is it located and what is surrounding it? Okay, well, question number 1 on this particular plan is, of course, right in the middle of this plan. Okay, so that could make it tough. We would have to listen for what are they going to use to get you started. Are they going to talk about how this particular thing is at the center of the entire complex, or is it next to the restrooms, or is it adjacent to the cafeteria? All right, we would have to listen closely for that, but we know that the information to answer question number 1 is going to come first in the description from the speakers. Okay, so that's key. Then if you look at my arrows there, we just notice, okay, we moved north, and I guess that's west to number 2. So maybe that's something that is going to be described by the speaker as when to move on to question 2. And then we go all the way across to the other side of the complex, across the restroom area, across whatever we have for in the middle of the complex for question 1 to get to question 3. So the questions are going to move in that order. And we should note, okay, what are some possibilities for the way they're going to describe that movement? All right, that's something to pay attention to as you're planning and analyzing questions before you listen to a passage. All right, now let's try to answer some questions here. I'm going to give you a chance to listen to a part of a passage that would help you to answer these 2 particular questions, okay? So we've got questions 1 and 2. And we've got our answer choices all the way over to the left. Now, I'm going to help analyze this with you just a little bit before you listen. Notice a couple of things. First of all, our labels. We've got the ocean floor there, so that ship that we see is way at the bottom of the ocean floor. Maybe that's important to our description. We have something called a transducer. up to at the top left corner, and actually the item itself, the transducer, is that object you see with the arrow pointing to it. So perhaps we know what that is, perhaps we don't. Okay, if you know what that is, great. That's going to help you. But that's something we're going to hear described by the speakers. Okay, we can assume that. And then it looks like answer choice number 2, question 2, is going to be something connected to that transducer, maybe a part of the transducer. So that's important to notice, that we might need to listen for something that is somehow connected to or part of the transducer itself. And then what's going on with these arrows? Well, if you look at the answer choices over to the left, perhaps you could make a good guess. So these arrows are going to be something directionally heading towards the boat that we're seeing down at the bottom of the ocean floor. And then we're supposed to label the arrows going down. And then there are arrows going back up towards this thing, the transducer. Okay, we don't need to label those, but apparently that's going to be something that's described by the speaker in some way as well. All right, so what is the down arrow coming out of the transducer, and what is this object that's attached to or part of the transducer? Those are the things we need to listen for from the speakers of this passage. Okay, we've got some answer choices to the left: dormant, ping, echo, shipwreck, and receiver. All right, now just a quick note here. I noticed, now maybe you're not sure, maybe A is a new word for you, but the word dormant is different from these other words because dormant is an adjective. All the other words are nouns. Okay, that is an interesting thing to note if you would notice that before listening to this passage. Okay, so that's enough analyzing this. Why don't you give it a shot? This is, I'll just set this up for you. This is a portion of a classroom discussion where the professor and some students are discussing the topic of sonar. Okay, so we're going to pick it up in about the middle of this passage where the 2 items that we're supposed to label are described. Okay, I'm going to play the passage now.
Professor Milton, how can an object like a shipwreck that's been lying on the ocean floor for years produce an echo? It's completely dormant.
That's because the echo isn't of a noise sent out from the shipwreck. It's sent out from the ship. The sonar device. That's why we say this is an active sonar transducer. In active sonar, a signal of sound is transmitted through the water. You may have heard of the words pulse or ping to describe this signal. It's a short pitch, but it travels at the speed of sound. And because we know the precise speed of sound in water,
then we know by the time until the echo of the signal gets back to the transducer how far away the object is.
Exactly. And in which direction it can be found too. The sounds emitted from the transducer are sometimes audible, but often they're ultrasonic. That means the pings are so high-pitched they're beyond the capabilities of perception by the human ear. But the transducer is equipped with a special receiver for these kinds of signals.
Okay, so how did you do? Were you able to get those 2 questions? Well, the answers I hope you got are number 1, B. So the down arrow there is what is described as a ping by the speakers. And number 2 is the receiver. The receiver is what is described as the object on the transducer that receives the signal, the echo, that comes back from the ping that is directed down towards the ocean floor, and that's how sonar sort of works. It's sort of these signals are sent out towards the bottom of the ocean floor in this case, and then the echo is returns to the transducer and is picked up by a special receiver that is capable of hearing that particular noise. Okay, so those are your answers there. Here's where they come in the passage. So some wrong answer choices there. So shipwreck obviously doesn't make sense for each of these. If you know what that is, you know that a shipwreck is a ship that sank to the bottom of the ocean. So that ship at the bottom could be labeled a shipwreck, but that wasn't one of our answers that we needed to provide. Dormant, okay, is our adjective there that we noted before listening, and that is used to describe the ship that is at the bottom. So the student wonders, how could a ship produce a signal? And the professor indicates, well, actually the ship doesn't produce a signal. It's an echo off of the ship there. Okay, so dormant doesn't work. What we get in the green there, the possible answers that are used to describe the signal being transmitted or sent out of the transducer are pulse or ping. Okay, and the professor even says you may have heard the words pulse or ping to describe this particular signal. Okay, so and that's where we get the answer choice for number 1, that signal that is being sent down. Some clues for you from what the professor says. After the professor describes this signal as a pulse or a ping, he continues on. He says it's a short pitch, but it travels at the speed of sound. Okay, short. The diagram shows you a bunch of short signals being sent out of the transducer. So that's a clue to you about what the professor was describing in that case, where these signals are sent out, these very short signals are sent out towards the ocean floor. Okay, then the female student responds, okay, then we know by the time until the echo of the signal gets back to the transducer how far away the object is. Okay, so these echoes are the things that are on your diagram there, showing that they return back to the transducer, and that's what the transducer picks up. Our answer for number 2 then comes all the way at the end of what the male professor responds with, okay? So he says all the way at the bottom of the sentence, but the transducer is equipped with a special receiver for these kinds of signals. Okay, to be equipped means that is something that is part of or belongs on the transducer. Okay, so that's what we saw in the diagram. This object that is sort of attached to the bottom of the transducer that the arrow is pointing to for question number 2, that's where we get the answer we need to supply there, which is receiver, one of the answer choices in the box. Okay, so that's how to approach these plan, map, and diagram completion questions on the IELTS listening paper. Remember, you're going to be mostly listening for directional vocabulary, descriptions of a place, or descriptions of an object to help you complete these questions. What you need to do is to just simply study the given information, okay? In the time before you're listening, you study all that's there, you look for the first question, and you analyze the sequence of questions to get clues about what order the information will come in the passage. So that's how to approach this type of question on the IELTS listening paper. In this lesson, we're going to focus on matching questions for the listening paper. Let's take a close look at these. All right, so matching questions look like this. We have a basic question up towards the top there. You see it says, will Julia participate in the following activities during her vacation to Hawaii? And then we get a list of choices. Sometimes these choices are in a box, sometimes just a list like this one. And our choices are A, she will do this activity, B, she might do this activity, or C, she will not do this activity. Okay, so we know that Julie is going to be doing some activities. We have to see about whether she's going to do some particular ones or not. And those activities are the numbered choices below. So number 1, 2, and 3. These are our questions. Okay, so number 1 is snorkeling. And we need to choose the correct answer choice, A, B, or C, for number 1, number 2, and number 3, based on what is discussed in the passage. Okay, so that's what these matching questions look like. You'll have a list of items, and you have to match the correct item, the correct letter choice, A, B, or C, or more choices are possible as well, with the numbers and whatever information is supplied by the numbers. Okay, so that's what these questions look like. We'll analyze this set of questions in a little bit after we discuss how to approach this question type. Okay, first let's look at some basic information about this question type. All right, so as we just saw, the main point of this question, the main activity you'll be doing, is to match a numbered list of items, okay, these are your questions, with answer choices, which will appear in a list, sometimes in a box for you. So this question type is used to test detailed comprehension. So you're supposed to listen for details to answer this question type. As you're in the time you have before you listen, as you're analyzing this question type, there are a couple things to keep in mind. First, you need to understand the question. Okay, so you will listen for specific piece of information for this question type. In our example that we saw at the beginning of this lesson, we were given the question, okay, what activities will Julia do? Okay, and then we give the list. She will do this, she might do this, she will not do that. It's important to understand exactly what you're supposed to listen for from this part of the question. Then secondly, you look at the numbered prompts, okay? These will give a list of items, and it's these things that will be answered in order in the passage, okay? So from numbers 1 to whatever you're answering, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, whatever it is, the answers for each of those will come in order, will be spoken or provided by the speakers in order, in that order in the passage. Okay, we see this in other listening question types as well, where the answer for question 3, for example, will be provided by the speakers before you can expect to get the answer for question number 4 in a set of questions. Okay, so it's that list, the numbered list, that will provide this order for matching questions. All right, now let's analyze our sample set of questions here a little bit to think about how to approach it, how you might approach a question set like this as you're analyzing and predicting before you listen to the speakers. First of all, we talked about understanding the question. Okay, so in this case, it's important to know the key words, the things you're supposed to listen for. In this question set, I underlined, will Julia participate? And I underlined activities, and also Hawaii, okay? We're supposed to listen for these activities and whether Julia will participate in them or not. There are some questions you should ask. Remember, this is we're looking at this question set before we've listened to the speakers talking, so there's some things we don't know. Possibly there are going to be other people discussed, other people besides Julia. Maybe there's a person named Eric or Steve or somebody else, and he will participate in different activities than Julia does. So we need to keep in mind that we're only listening for Julia's activities in this question set. Okay, also, do we know that Hawaii is the only vacation we're going to be hearing about? Maybe there are going to be other vacations discussed, and we need to keep that information straight as well. So that's why I underlined, will Julia participate, activities in Hawaii, because we need to keep straight that this is the specific information we're supposed to listen for. Okay, then of course, it's important to just keep in mind the 3 options in the question. She definitely will, she might, and she will not. So we can expect to hear some answers about this, these different activities in the passage. All right, so that's what you would do for the first step to sort of understand the question. Secondly, then, we need to just take a look at the options, the choices we have by the numbers for our matching questions. We're going to hear about snorkeling, horseback riding, eating at a famous restaurant. Now, they may talk about these topics in a variety of different ways. Maybe they go back and forth among these topics and activities that they're discussing, but the answer choices are going to come in order. So we will get a definite answer about yes, maybe, or no to snorkeling before we get a definite answer about yes, no, or maybe to the horse riding activity. Just keep that in mind, that these activities are ordered in this way because we can expect a definite answer of yes, maybe, or no to each of these, one before the other, by the speakers who are speaking in the passage. Now, as we have seen in other question types, for example, multiple choice in particular, just keep an open mind always. The speakers can change their minds, okay? The answers will come in order, but they can go back and forth between them. Let's say that they're talking about horse riding, and the speaker may seem like she's definitely going to do this, but then she might change her mind after a few sentences later. Okay, just keep that in mind, that speakers often do change their minds or change course in IELTS listening passages. Let's do a practice question now. Okay, so here we've got a set of matching questions. Let's take a look at this, and then in a moment I'm going to play the recording so you can try to answer it for yourself. Okay, so we have in the question, according to the woman, okay, why are the following comic books important? All right, so definitely underline the word important and comic books, okay? And this is according to the woman. Possibly that might make a difference. Maybe there's a man in this conversation who's going to provide a different opinion about the importance of these books, okay? And that's something we don't really want to pay attention to answer this question. What we need to know is what the woman thinks about why these comic books are important. All right, so that's why I would underline woman and comic books important as the key word to this set of matching questions. Okay, now let's look at the different choices we have. A, debated serious topics of the day. B, widely accepted as valuable literature. Or C, led to the creation of other significant works. Okay, so what we have then down below in the answer choices are different comic books. All right, now one thing to keep in mind, and this is something that is true for almost all matching questions, is that you can choose A, B, or C more than once. Okay, so the answers to 1, 2, and 3, maybe B is the correct answer for 2 of them, or all 3, or maybe just 1. We don't know. You cannot just simply cross off an answer choice and expect it won't be used again. You can use the answer choices A, B, or C multiple times when the directions tell you that you may choose any letter more than once. Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind here. All right, now you're going to hear a passage, and we're going to listen for the different comic books mentioned and what the woman has to say about why they are important, okay? So listen for that as we hear the passage, and I'm going to play that now.
Personally, I was only ever interested in comics when I was a child. I haven't read them in years, and I still very much think of them as something made for children or for adults who simply don't want to grow up. Now, I'm willing to admit that might be prejudice on my part, and as I read your paper, I was looking for something to convince me I was wrong. But I'm afraid I just didn't find it.
But my paper specifically mentioned several famous American comic books with serious literary merit. Watchmen was named one of the greatest novels ever written, despite being a comic book, and Mouse won a Pulitzer Prize. Many people accept comics as a place where serious literary work can be done.
I think that's a fair point, but it's not a point you fully made in your paper. If that's the argument you'd like to make now, I have to call attention to the fact that you chose to focus your study on the superhero comics of the 1960s, which are far less literary in nature than the examples you just mentioned.
Well, I did focus on those, but the point was to lay a foundation for the literary study of comic books by focusing on early classics from the field. I argued that those comics of the 1960s are precursors to the more serious work that followed in later decades.
Okay, so some back and forth between the student and the male professor there. And so remember, what we care about in this question is what the woman thinks about these different works. Okay, so here are the places in green where we get the correct answers for our set of matching questions. Okay, so towards the beginning of the passage you heard, the comic books Watchmen and Mouse were mentioned right away at the beginning. And after she mentions those, she says this: many people accept comics as a place where serious literary work can be done. Okay, so she says there that many people accept. That's a paraphrase of the phrase from our answer choice B, where it says widely accepted. Okay, so many people accept that these are serious literary works. Okay, so B is your correct answer for these two comics, Watchmen and Mouse. All right? Then, after the male professor has something to say, she mentions, she sort of responds to his criticism of her discussion of the 1960s superhero comics by saying that, at the bottom in green, that they were precursors to more serious work that followed in later decades. Okay, so this one is testing your knowledge of the word precursor, because that idea paraphrases what we get in the answer choices. Let's just look at them. We've already said that 1 and 2 are B, and answer choice C is correct for the third one, because precursors means the same thing, or paraphrases the idea that these 1960s superhero comics led to the creation of other significant works. Okay, so these were precursors to those more serious literary works that the woman was talking about. Now, A might have been tempting, but the tricky word, the word that was put in there to sort of possibly cause problems, is the word serious there. There's no discussion by either speaker of how these comic books debated serious topics of the day. That would be like discussing controversial issues. All right. There's no discussion about why these books are important due to their coverage of difficult or debatable topics at all. What they're described as is being important literary works by the woman, and the male professor is sort of trying to be convinced that that's true based on what the student is saying. Okay, so A doesn't work because it's not something mentioned, even though that word serious is discussed and thrown in there in the question here in the answer choice, and it's something that's mentioned in the passage, but they are talking about serious literary work, not serious debatable topics. Okay, so that's why A doesn't work, and B works for 1 and 2. C is the answer choice there for C. Okay, to review, for matching questions, what you have to do, you're supposed to match a numbered list of items to answer choices with letters. Okay, so that's the activity you're supposed to do. And often these are used to test detailed comprehension. You're supposed to listen for details, like we saw with the comic book names there. So Watchmen, Mouse, and the 60s superhero comics were details, and you had to listen for information about those different comic books. That's a good example of what you might face on for matching questions on the listening paper. Okay, so what you should try to do in the time you have to analyze and predict before you listen, you take a close look at the question, make sure you understand exactly what they're asking you to find, look at the different A, B, and C answer choices you might need to supply, but then pay close attention to your list of items. Those are the things you're going to need to track. As you listen to the speaker talking, those answers will come in order for the numbered list that you have down below. Okay, so, and last piece of advice, just watch out. As with other question types, especially multiple choice and matching is the same, speakers may change their mind about certain things. So you just need to keep an open mind and just be expecting that sometimes speakers will change course. Okay, so those are matching questions for the IELTS listening paper. We're going to cover multiple choice questions for the listening paper in this lesson. Okay, so multiple choice questions are a type of question you're probably very familiar with. For the listening paper, most of the time you're going to have a question with 3 answer choices, just like the ones you see here. There's a basic question, for example, number 1. The reason for the special seminar is, and then we need to choose the correct answer based on what you hear. Okay, so a very familiar question type. We're going to look at strategies related to this question, these 2 questions here in just a moment. But first, let's talk about what to do and how to strategize as you approach these questions on the IELTS listening paper. First of all, just some basic information. These questions, the directions are very simple. You're just going to choose the correct letter, A, B, or C. It'll tell you which choices are possible there. Sometimes you will be instructed to choose more than one answer. In this case, there will be more answer choices provided. There may be 5 choices and they'll tell you choose 2 or something like that. So yeah, you do have to read the directions, but if you see anything more than 3 answer choices, you know it's going to be that you have to choose more than one. So just like you always do, make sure to take a quick look at the directions to make sure you know exactly how many answer choices you should select. Okay, now some more basic information about this question type. Okay, so as we saw, this can be the format of these questions can be a question itself. So they might ask you, what did the speaker say about this? And then you'll have 3 choices after that. So it can be in the form of a question. It can also be in the form of a sentence or a phrase that's incomplete, and you sort of have to finish that sentence or phrase with the answer choices provided for you. Okay, so those are 2 possibilities there. The answer choices will be in letter form, so A, B, C, or possibly more if they ask you to supply more than one answer. In terms of strategy, all right, before the passage begins, in the time you have to analyze and make predictions about the questions, make sure you do a couple of things for these. First, read the prompt carefully and decide what kind of information will answer the question. Okay, we're going to look at an example of this in a moment, but you should be able to underline the key words in the question that will help you to determine exactly what you're supposed to look for. It helps to underline or even write notes beside each question to indicate what you're supposed to focus on, what you're supposed to listen for from the speaker for that particular question. But you also need to focus on the answer choices and underline keywords for those. Each one will contain some information that will tell you whether or not it fits what the speaker says or not, and it helps to know what to listen for before the passage begins. So not only reading the question, but also taking a look at the answer choices can be a very important thing to try to do before the speaking starts. Okay, now it's tough. You only have a short time to look over all the questions, and sometimes IELTS listening paper, you have a lot of multiple choice questions to look at in a particular section. So this can be difficult to do within the short time you have, but at a very minimum, make sure you study the question and the answer choices for keywords, trying to figure out and make predictions about what to listen for. We'll look at some examples of that in just a moment. Okay, but first, as you listen, so as the speakers are talking and you're trying to answer questions, it's important to keep in mind that each answer choice will have some connection to the passage, okay? IELTS never just gives you an answer choice that's wildly sort of wrong, that's clearly wrong and easy to figure out. Each answer choice will have some connection. Either it's going to be maybe a similar word or exactly the same word is used in the passage by the speaker, or there's a sense in which, possibly each of answer choice might feel correct if you didn't have especially a full understanding of the vocabulary words, or maybe you misunderstood a sentence or something like that. Okay, so IELTS chooses its answer choices very carefully, and each one will be somewhat tempting, although there will only be one clear answer for each question. Okay, now, often as you're listening, okay, you're going to hear what you think might be a correct answer. But then later, the speaker changes course, changes his or her mind, or makes a correction, or does something to change the information. For example, let's imagine you have a sentence like this in the listening passage you're listening to. So the speaker says, "I would love to join you at the theater this afternoon." And maybe the question you're trying to answer is about, okay, what time will the two people meet each other? Morning, afternoon, or evening? Okay, so here, we think we have the right answer because the speaker said afternoon. But then a few seconds later, or even later than that in the passage, the speaker corrects himself. "Oh, I have an appointment that will last until 5:30 p.m. Could we get tickets for 7 p.m.? All right, so in this case, the correct answer, assuming that the speaker doesn't change his or her mind again, is going to be evening, okay, not afternoon or morning, because of this correction. Okay, so be careful for that. The changing course is something that can happen pretty regularly on the multiple choice questions on the listening paper. Okay, now let's take a look now at the sample questions we saw at the beginning of this lesson and think about how to use our strategy in order to approach these questions like you would want to do on the test. Okay, so the first thing we do, as mentioned earlier, is to take a close look at the question itself. So, number one, the reason for the special seminar is what? Okay, and we've got those three choices there. Now, the key to this and the most important part of the question we see there is the reason. What we're supposed to listen for is the reason for the special seminar. So our answer choices are going to be reasons, and that's what we're going to be listening for from the speakers in the passage that will come soon. So as we're planning and as we're trying to make predictions for what answer choices to select, we need to underline or circle this part of the question because this is what we're listening for in the passage as the speakers are talking. Okay, now some things to think about with this particular question prompt. All right, now it says special seminar, the reason for the special seminar. Now, we haven't listened to the passage yet. We don't know what the speakers are going to say. So we should ask ourselves a question. Is this going to be one of several kinds of seminars discussed in the passage? Is there going to be a regular seminar or some kind of different seminar described? We don't know. That would be something to be careful about with this question, that there might be different seminars described. And so we have to keep all of that straight and think about which seminar relates to this particular information, which is only focused on the special seminar. Okay, so something to consider there. I would certainly underline the reason in this question and probably put a question mark next to special seminar, just in case the speaker starts talking about different kinds of seminars. All right, now, as we look at the answer choices and think about what's coming for those, notice that we have three very different kinds of activities here. We have review, planning, and discussion. Okay, so those are three very separate, very different types of things that could be described here, and those would be good things to notice, that those are our three options for this that will supply the reason for the special seminar. Okay, so those are the things I would underline and try to take a quick look at to analyze question number one. Okay, question two then, pretty similar kind of thing we have to do. So, question two, the speaker instructs the class to. Okay, we need to listen for, the key information there is to listen for what the speaker tells the class they must do. Okay, so we need to underline that part because we're looking for some type of thing that's sort of maybe in a command form or a set of instructions. Okay, then as we look at the answer choices, notice this, that answer choices A and C are a little bit similar in the sense that the verbs study and review could be quite similar and possibly might even share a similar paraphrase or synonym as the speaker's talking. So we'd want to be careful there. So we'd have to look later in the sentence there or in the phrase to figure out, okay, what are they supposed to study and what are they supposed to review for these two answer choices? Well, so for A, it's studying author's notes, and C, it's reviewing a lecture outline. Those would be key details to keep separate as you're trying to listen for the answer to this question. Answer choice B is very different from A and C. They're instructed to write something, okay, and post it possibly in a forum of some kind. So that's a very different thing than answer choices A and C. All right, so a lot of details to keep straight. Use your pencil as you're listening in your test booklet. Underline these keywords from the answer choices and give it a little thought in the time you have before you listen, trying to figure out how each of the answer choices is going to be different and possibly expressed differently by the speakers in the passage. Okay, now let's do a practice question here to apply some of the things we've learned about so far. In a moment, I'm going to play a recording so you can try to answer this particular question. But first, let's just take a close look at it to think about what we would do to prepare for listening for this answer. All right, now the question says, the student visits the library, and then each answer choice continues on to ask, to find, or to track down. What we're looking for is the reason. Why is the student going to the library? And we need to listen for that reason from what's mentioned in the text. All right, now some differences among the answer choices. So the student's going to the library to find information about a forgotten text, okay, to get a revision of a famous story, or to track down a rare short story. Okay, so notice some things there in the words used. Forgotten and rare, answer choices A and C. Those are somewhat similar words, although forgotten means that something is, people no longer remember it, right? It's not something that's discussed or talked about. Rare is very different, right? Rare, it means that something is difficult to find. There aren't many of that thing out there, okay? So rare and forgotten are key words there that supply some differences between these two answer choices, okay? B is very different. A famous story, very different idea than rare and forgotten. Okay, so that's something to notice before you listen. And those are things I would certainly underline as I'm preparing to answer this question. All right. Now, let's listen to the passage, and you can try your best to answer this question based on what you hear. Okay, so I'm going to start the passage now.
Excuse me, I'm wondering if you might be able to help me. I'm looking for the original text of a short story by an author I'm studying for my 20th century American literature class, and it turns out that this particular story's original version is a little obscure.
I'd be happy to help you, but what about the story makes it obscure? Is it simply not a well-known piece of work?
Well, actually it's a somewhat well-known story, but it's been published in different versions over the last several decades. I've read it several times in collections of stories, so I know the story well, but I haven't read every version of it.
Okay, so hopefully you got the correct answer here. In this case, it's answer choice C. And we got that from a couple of different spots in the passage. So let's analyze why this is the correct answer. So he says, I'm looking for the original text of a short story. Okay, so that removes answer choice B as an option because he's saying I want the original text, and answer choice B says the latest revision. Okay, so that already excludes answer choice B. A and C at this point would still be possible. But let's continue. He says, and it turns out on this particular story's original version is a little obscure. Okay, another reason here why B is not correct, because obscure is not the same as famous. Obscure means rare. Okay, so already we're getting support for answer choice C. So B is clearly not right, but A could still work at this point because A, we're talking about a forgotten text. Well, obscure and forgotten are a little different from each other, but you could still make an argument that A is correct at this point. Okay, but then we have later, the male student continues. After the librarian says something in reply to him, he continues this way. Well, actually, it's a somewhat well-known story, but it's been published in different versions. Okay, here we see why A cannot be correct, because it's a well-known story. It's not a forgotten story. So the story's well-known, the text is well-known, it's just that the original text is somewhat obscure. And so there, that is a much closer meaning to C, that it's a rare short story. It's a rare version of the story, difficult to track down. The story itself hasn't been forgotten. Actually, it's somewhat well known. It's just hard to find the original script of it. And that's what the student is talking about. So that's why C is your best answer. And this is a good example of a multiple choice question where you have to keep listening, keep an open mind about the answer choices, and try to maybe cross things off that you hear to be incorrect, and try to determine which one is the best answer based on all the information provided by the speakers. Okay, so these are our multiple choice questions. Just as a quick review of what we learned in this lesson, make sure to read the prompt carefully, decide what kind of information will answer the question. So you read each question, look at the answer choices, and underline keywords in those as well, because analyzing those will tell you what kind of information will work and will not work as possibilities once the speakers begin talking about the subject they're discussing. The last one, keep an open mind while you listen. Just keep in mind that speakers often change course or that answers might unfold over a little bit of time in the passage. So you keep an open mind. Try to figure out which one is the best answer after all the information is provided for each question. Okay, so those are multiple choice questions and how to approach them on the listening paper. This lesson focuses on an IELTS listening question type that actually has several different varieties of questions that basically all do the same kind of thing, or at least they ask you to do the same kind of thing. So we're going to group them all together and take a look at form, note, flowchart, table, and summary completion questions, which all share a lot of similar features with one another. First, let's just look at some examples so you can become familiar with these. And I'll go somewhat quickly through these, but if you want to pause your video and take a look at the examples, you can see the various types that are here. This first one is a note completion question. This is in this type of question, you've got some notes. Sometimes this is something you'll find in a part 4 listening passage, okay, where a professor is usually giving a lecture on something. You might have some notes about the lecture, or it could be something much more basic. It could be something like, I think what we see here is either a monologue or a discussion about the some place called the Office of Community Enhancement, and we're looking at some notes that we need to fill in about a discussion or a presentation about that particular place. Okay, so just some basic kind of notes like you would fill out in a class you take. Okay, the second type here, form completion questions. Just like the name suggests, this is just a form you need to fill out. You can expect to find one of these on part 1 of the listening test, because often this involves just very basic information like you see here. You have to listen for someone's name, a number of some kind, in this case a residence hall. Here this looks like an application that a student would fill out in order to sign up for a meal plan at his or her school. So we just need to listen for this basic information. That's what we would need to do for this form completion question. Okay, the next type is table completion questions. Again, you can see these are all very similar. In this case, we have some kind of table or it's almost like often a sort of spreadsheet or something like that, where you have different categories of things and you need to fill out the chart or fill out the table that you see there. So if you notice on this one, at the top we've got some labels, park name, and we've got different parks. These parks are all located in the United States. Founding year. Okay, so we've got to listen for when that park was first founded, and the number of annual visitors at the park. Okay, so we just need to listen to the description from the speakers and fill out the necessary information for this type of question. Next one, we've got a summary completion here. We've got information summarized, information you're going to hear from the passage that's summarized, and we need to fill in the words that fit in each of the blanks here to complete the summary. Okay, so just like the other questions, except here we've got a short paragraph that needs to be completed using words that we hear from the speakers. All right, and the last type within this sort of general category, we've got a flowchart question. So a flowchart is something that describes a process, something from beginning to end, and you simply need to fill in the blanks for the chart there. All right. Now, as you can tell, looking through some basic information here, all of these question types are pretty similar to one another, even though they take different forms. The basic idea is that you need to fill in gaps in the provided information. Okay, so all of these give you some information, whether it's notes or a table or a summary. They give you a lot of information, and you simply need to fill in the missing pieces to that information that's provided. The question types in this category all usually focus on main ideas, so it's rare that you'll have to listen for a very, very small detail, okay? But it's possible, and there's no guarantee it's all going to be main or basic ideas, so you just need to study what's there and look for what kind of information to listen for in the passage. Okay, so two varieties here. So you will either do one of the following. Number one, you're either going to select answers from a list of choices. Okay, so like on other question types we find in the listening paper, there could be a box with lettered answer choices for you to choose from. Or the second option will be to choose words that are spoken in the passage itself, to use those words to fill in blanks, okay? So the second type here is just a short answer question type, so you'll have to pay attention to word counts like you always do on other types of short answer questions on the IELTS. Okay, now let's look at some strategies for this. So what should you do in the time you have before listening to the speakers providing information for these questions, okay, to analyze and predict for these? All right, the first thing, just like other types of questions with visuals or lots of information provided for you to analyze, make sure you spend your time studying the given information, including titles, okay? Look for whatever you can to give you a clue about what to expect and what kind of information to listen for. Now for these questions, expect that some of the labels, some of the information provided for you on the table or the chart or whatever you're looking at is going to be paraphrased, okay? But they will also often give you some direct language to give you clues about when to move from one question to the next, okay? But do expect that at least some of it will be paraphrased, especially if there's information in the question itself. So let's say you're trying to answer question number 2 and there is some descriptive information surrounding that prompt in some place, that would be a good place to expect some paraphrased language from what the speaker says, okay? But anyway, just keep in mind, not all labels or information on the chart that's given to you or provided is going to be direct language from the text. It could be paraphrased. Okay, now as you analyze, pay close attention to the question organization on the visual. What categories of things do you need to listen for? Earlier we saw an example on our table completion question where some of the information related to the dates, okay, the dates that the national parks were founded, right? That is key information to know that we're going to be listening for numbers, okay, and just analyzing where each of the questions is located, circling those categories if you need to. That's a really good idea. Related to that, look for information to tell you when you're going to move from one question to the next. Okay, so are there do the questions fall under certain labels or categories on the visual you're looking at? What are the clues provided on the chart or the table, whatever you're looking at, to let you know that you are going to move, for example, from question 2 to question 3, okay? That is key information to notice and to look for before the passage begins. Okay, now special note for summary questions. These are a little different from the others in this category, even though you have to supply missing information just like all the others. In this case, before you listen, your number one goal should be to try to read through the summary from beginning to end before the speaker begins speaking. Okay, so that you've got a short amount of time. If you see a summary question coming, use that time to read the whole summary so you know what's there. Underline keywords as you go, really using very similar strategies, except that there's going to be more language to get through than you might find on some type of table or a set of notes. Okay, so a little challenging there, but basically the same idea as the others. All right, let's look at an example here now, just thinking about how to apply our strategies we've just discussed. So here's our note completions question that we saw way at the beginning of this lesson. So a few things to notice for this. If I had a question like this, I would begin by, first of all, just taking a quick scan of the notes to notice what's there. First of all, we know from the directions that we have a word limit of 3 words and or a number there. So that it could be a relatively long answer for a short answer question like this. Okay, now notice first, we've got our title for this set of notes, Office of Community Enhancement. Okay, what is this going to be? What is an Office of Community Enhancement? Well, we don't know, and we're gonna have to listen to the speakers to know exactly what this kind of thing is. But enhancement means to make something better, right? So this is some kind of office related to making the community better in whatever place this is that we're listening to. Okay, could be useful information as we listen. All right, then as we go down, notice along the left side of our notes, we have what looks like category information. So the purpose of the agency, the current projects, and the future projects. Okay, really good clues there, indicating when you're going to need to move from one question to the next as you focus on listening for the answers, right? The question number 1, we're looking for, well, basically it looks like, what is the Office of Community Enhancement's mission, okay? What does it try to do? What's the purpose of that agency? And we have to listen for what they provide. All right, we don't know what that's going to be, but that's the idea, that's the basic idea we're going to have to listen for number 1. As soon as they then start talking about, this person starts talking about projects of some kind, projects that are happening now, maybe they're going to talk about projects that happened in the past and we just don't have any information in our notes related to that. But what we're looking for question number 2 are the projects that this office is currently doing or currently working on, okay? So these are current projects, and we know from the provided information that there's a common area organization project going on, there's some type of music project going on, and then we need to figure out, after they talk about this music project, what is the third thing that they're working on currently. Okay, that's different from the things they're planning in the future, our third category. So as soon as the speaker starts shifting towards future projects or things they're going to do or planning to do, okay, think through what keywords they might to describe to do this. We need to then focus on question number 3. So recreation center beautification, so making the recreation center look nicer in some way. Okay, and then we've got to listen for number 3 there, whatever that's going to be. All right, very simple sort of strategy here, just trying to notice what are going to be the movements from one question to the next, what is the key or basic information provided here, and what information do you need to listen for as you go through this. All right, now let's give this a try. Let's practice. So we're going to hear a portion of a lecture a portion of a discussion, a classroom discussion on sonar, the topic of sonar. And we've got some notes from the discussion that we need to fill out. So 2 questions from the notes, okay? Now, before we listen, notice that there are 2 words of a 2-word limit on your answers for the short answer question here. And we've got 2 categories, just like we saw in the last slide. We've got to look for that category information in the notes, and the 2 basic categories that we see here are common uses of sonar, so that would be a key word to underline there, uses, and common. All right, so we can expect that the discussion's going to surround in some way the normal uses of this thing, sonar. If you know what sonar is or not, we will have to listen for that, right, from the discussion. Secondly, then, special uses. Okay, interesting contrast there. Common uses and special uses of sonar, and key information there, in the ocean. Okay, so we're going to listen for what special applications are there for sonar in the sea, in the ocean. All right, and we need to listen for it. We've got some information provided, and we need to listen for what information completes this list of things in our notes. Okay, so we're going to pick up the lecture in the middle of the lecture here, and we're just going to listen to the part that pertains to these 2 questions, okay? So I'm going to play this passage now.
This technology's been used to discover long-lost shipwrecks, right?
Yes, Mark. Sonar equipment has helped solve the mysteries of some long-lost shipwrecks, but its everyday use is a bit more boring, mundane. Stuff like, how deep is the ocean floor here or there? What kind of rock or soil is there for drilling? Is there oil or gas below? The sonar echo is quite useful to many kinds of scientists, geophysicists, seismologists, oceanic cartographers, and even doctors.
Doctors? So sonar can actually be used on land?
Sometimes. Sonar is an acronym for Sound Navigation and Ranging. It's not very strictly limited to use in water, but it's particularly useful for oceanic charting and exploration because sound waves travel farther in liquid than light waves or radar do. Those are 2 object detection systems that are more effective above the surface of the water.
Okay, so the correct answer for this, hopefully you caught these. Number 1, we hear, and this is language that's very similar to what's used by the professor in the lecture, identifying rock or soil types for drilling. Okay, the answer number 2, there were 2 special uses of sonar described for the ocean, and those were exploration and the answer choice for number 2, charting. Okay, and that comes from these parts of the discussion here. First of all, we get the list of things that are mentioned in your question. So if we return to that question again, the 3 things listed are measuring seafloor depth, then our question number 1, and then the last one is locating gas or oil. All right, so the professor just talks about this, right? Just above our answer in line 3 there, how deep is the ocean floor here or there? Okay, so that's a discussion of one use, a general use for sonar, which is to measure the depth of the ocean floor. The second thing is listed next. What kind of rock or soil is there for drilling? Okay, some very similar language, not even much of a paraphrase there with the words rock or soil, okay? And the purpose for drilling is mentioned there, and that, of course, gives us our answer for number 1. And then the third thing, is there oil or gas below? All right, so our 3 items listed there as general uses of sonar. Then on the next part of the discussion we hear, and it comes very quickly there, so you had to catch both of these things. But on the sea, in the ocean, right, the professor says it's particularly useful for oceanic charting and exploration. Okay, and so that's where we get our answer for question number 2 from the passage there. All right, so that's how to approach this type of question that has many different varieties, but really the same basic sort of goal or the same activity that you need to do to answer these questions well. Your job is to fill in gaps in information in all these forms of the question. What you need to do is study the provided information as you're planning before you listen to the passage. You're going to have time to study that information, including the titles, look for labels, look for any information to sort of get acquainted and get familiar with the information that's provided to you. Okay, and then you just need to pay attention to the organization of the visual, right? So how are the questions, where are the questions located? What information is there to give you an idea about when you're going to move from one question to the next? Usually there's some type of label or some bolded information and some notes or some key indication to give you an idea of when to move from one question to the next. Okay, so that's how to approach this type of question that has many different forms on the IELTS listening paper.